Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes for people to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, for those of you who just joined, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Again, we're going to wait just 1 or 2 more minutes so that people have time to join, and then we will get started. I'm just going to paste in the chat the link to the form when you can ask your questions. To send it to everyone. There you go. Okay, so it looks like things are slowing down a bit. So like most people seems to be in. So we will get started now. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this Q&A about our policy officer position. I'm Catherine Derieux. I'm the talent acquisition and DEI specialist at GFI Europe. And joining me today is Alex Holst. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Catherine. Welcome also from me. I'm Alex Holst, Senior Policy Manager in our EU Brussels office. I will be line managing this role and hopefully can give you a few useful answers today. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. So as I mentioned before, please submit your questions through the form. It's fully anonymous. I'm putting the link in the chat. We won't be monitoring the Zoom chat, so please use the form to submit your questions. And maybe to get started, Alex, could you tell us a few words about this position?
Sure. So this policy officer role, I think, is really exciting. It's a really exciting role that will enable our policy team to have a lot more impact in Brussels and beyond. So the role is within our EU-focused policy team. So a bunch of us are trying to influence the EU institutions to unlock public R&D funding, create a robust and clear regulatory path to market, and to make sure the policy environment is supportive with regards to rules like labeling or denominations. And for each of those policy areas, we have currently a workstream lead. And this policy officer role will very much support those workstream leads based on the needs within the different work streams, but also based on the interest of the role or the person who will, in the end, fulfill this role. And when I say support, I really mean leading on specific projects within these different work streams. So I would say that's the one big aspect of the role. The second big aspect is that this role will entail scoping out new areas of our policy work, looking what are additional policy areas where we might have maximum impact that has not been a focus of our policy work so far. And then maybe thirdly, we think about this role, I think about this role very much as a role that has learning and development as at its core. So we really want to have someone join the team to upskill them to see that their personal professional progression grow within the policy team. I'll leave it at that, and maybe we get into some more detail in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. So maybe to start with the question, can you tell us, like, is this a newly created role? How did it come about?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. So we have not had a policy officer within our team. So this is a new role, and the logic behind it very much, I think, flows from the intro that I just gave, that there's so much potential opportunities for impact within our existing work streams, but also potential new policy areas, thinking about infrastructure, trade, taxation that we haven't even had the capacity to explore properly. And so we really want to unlock that potential impact. And for that, I think this role is going to be crucial.
Awesome, thank you. And to give a bit of context about our policy work, could you tell us what have been some of your main successes in your EU policy work so far?
Yeah, of course. I would say the most maybe publicly visible success was our advocacy efforts around the so-called EU veggie burger ban. So some of you who are attending might have been following this 2 years ago, that there were proposals in the European Parliament to essentially ban the use of terms like veggie burger or plant-based steak or vegan sausage at the EU level. And so we, together with a coalition of other stakeholders and actors, including NGOs, including companies, we lobbied the European Parliament and the European institutions more widely to reject those proposals for banning plant-based meat names. In the end, that was a success. So we defeated the amendment on meat denominations in October 2020, and subsequently also defeated a proposal to outlaw certain plant-based dairy terms, going further than the existing restriction in the EU at the Council of the EU level. So I think that was a major success, and I know I could go on and on about some of our successes that my colleagues had on R&D funding within Horizon Europe, dedicating specific funding to alternative protein research, but I'm going to stop here.
Awesome, thank you. I see that a few more people have joined us, so just a reminder that you can post your questions through the form that's linked in the chat. We won't be monitoring the Zoom chat, so please put your questions through that form, and it's fully anonymous. Thank you, and welcome also, by the way. Okay, so back to the questions. We have some questions around the experience required for this role. So how essential is it to have direct policy experience, and what level of experience are you looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. We definitely are looking for someone who has some policy experience. So if you're a completely fresh graduate who has never worked within a political institution or outside, so for a think tank or NGO or trade association or consultancy on policy, then this role is probably not for you. But we want to keep the minimum level of experience required. We want to keep that really open to lots of different prior experiences. So it could be someone who has already worked for 1, 2, 3 years on a national or EU policy level, but could also be someone who has done 1 or 2 traineeships at an EU institutions or at a similar institution after they graduated. So the goal for us is not to have this hard barrier of entry. If you have some exposure to policy processes, and it doesn't need to be EU level, it can be really international level, national level, then, and you are really interested in this role and feel like this role speaks to you and our mission speaks to you, then we would definitely want to hear from you.
Yes, please send your applications. Okay, so we have a few questions that are a bit more about the application process and things like that. So I'll take a few of those. So one person is asking, the application process is quite extensive for a position that does not entail management responsibilities. Will you value candidates' time and effort by providing feedback to candidates at each step of the recruitment process? So we do clearly value candidates' time and effort. We are fully aware that our process is quite thorough. The reasoning behind it is that we do believe that taking a job is one of the biggest decisions that you can make. We take that very seriously. So our process includes several steps, including a couple of assignments. And the point of those is for you also to get like really a taste of what the role will entail. Those assignments really mimic the kind of work that you would be doing in the position. And it's also a way for candidates to get to know us as much as we get to know you. So that's why we do have this forward process. That being said, we do update all candidates at each step. So if you apply, you definitely are going to be hearing from us. We try to be as transparent as possible about the process and to just communicate as much as possible about the different steps. This Q&A is an example about this. Regarding feedback, we do tend to get quite a lot of applications, and we are still quite a small team. So unfortunately, for capacity reason, we're not able to provide feedback, individuals feedback at each step, at least like the first few steps. But for candidates who make it to interviews, we definitely provide some feedback. So yes. Next question, someone is asking, how will the sample work task and the assignment be assessed? How will they be evaluated and ranked? Is there an evaluation rate you could share with candidates? So basically, as I mentioned, the assignments are made to kind of mimic the kind of work you would be doing in the position. And after the first, like the long listing, coming to the timed assignment, you will get a candidate number, which allows us to anonymize all the materials. And so the assignment will be we use like a double blind marking so that we can minimize bias. And in terms of how we evaluated them, basically like we use the criteria listed in the job description. That's what we would be referencing. I'm seeing people putting questions in the chat. I'm going to put again the link to the application form, please, because we can't monitor all the different pages, the chat plus the form. So please submit your questions through the question form. Thank you. Okay, so short and long listed candidates will be asked to complete assignments. Can you give more details about the content and duration of the assignments? Will the output produced be used by GFI Europe outside of the recruitment process? So on that last bit, very easy and straightforward question. No, we don't use any of your work outside for other purposes than just evaluating your application. So your work won't be used outside of the recruitment process. In terms of the assignments, so once you submit your application, if you're invited to the next round, it's going to be a timed assignment. So it's a timed 2-hour assignment. Basically, we send you a scheduled email with a link to the questions. So you can complete this assignment within usually like you have a week window to schedule it. And it can be done in the evening or during the weekends as well at a time that's convenient for you. Because again, like it's a scheduled email, so we can arrange that and make it as easy as possible for you. And the step after that is a written assignment. So in terms of content, it's fairly similar to the timed assignment. As I mentioned, these are just like some questions trying to mimic the work you would be doing in the position. And so for this one, we give candidates between 10 and 14 days to complete. It doesn't mean that you have to work on it full time for 2 weeks. Absolutely not. In terms of kind of the workload expectation is roughly similar to the timed assignment, so around 2,000 words, but you just have more time to complete it and to take the time to think about it and go a bit more in depth in your answers. I hope that answered the questions. Okay, let's go back to some policy questions maybe. Let me have a look. Alex, could you tell us how would you describe a normal day at work for you? I guess people are more interested in your day-to-day than mine, so.
Not sure that's the case. No, of course. Yeah, I mean, so I would say like there are there are three big buckets of types of work that we are performing in our team. One is having the internal meetings, internal calls, strategizing internally on how to, for example, approach a certain policy initiative, to talk to. Then there is the more focused work, deep work, thinking about engagement plans, writing policy papers, recommendations, that one is usually doing more individually in coordination with others, but requires a bit more, putting your attention over a couple of hours on any given piece of work. And then this is very much, I would say, a core part of the policy work is the external engagement, attending meetings with officials, with elected members of parliament or their staff, with other NGOs, nonprofits. And then part of that is also our coalition approach. So we are either a member or co-founder of several alliances at the EU and national level. So there is a fair amount of trying to amplify our own voices and amplify our own policy recommendations through collaboration with others. So I would say those are the three main parts. And then, of course, there are the non-usual working days, speaking at conferences, going to policy events, and so forth.
Awesome, thank you. Staying on the theme of just like work days, I think some people are asking about option for part-time and things like that. So let me have a look. Do you also offer 80% instead of full-time? Also in terms of flexible hours, how flexible can they be? Would you allow earlier and later start times with longer breaks? So yes, into this position, we're open for part-time from 0.5 FT and above, basically. And in terms of flexible hours, absolutely, we just tend to lead with trust and empowerment, and we trust people to do the work at the time that works best for them. So we're very happy to accommodate that, basically. So for people who want to start earlier, finish later, or have longer breaks and stuff like that. Also, that's also like, I think, one of the perks of this kind of the organization. If you have other commitments, like if you have people to take care of things like that, that's the kind of role that you can build around those other commitments as well. Do you have something to add to that, Alex?
No, I think you covered that perfectly. Thanks.
Cool. What type of training do you provide? So I can answer for the general team, and then Alex, you can say a word about policy specifically. So generally, like, we do have a budget for professional development that you are kind of free to use for things related to your work and what you think is the most useful for your work and the most impactful. And when you start working with us, you do have 2 weeks of onboarding where we provide training about the tools that we use, some background information about the organization and all of that. So basically you have 2 weeks where we try as much as possible to spare you from kind of the workflows and just giving you the opportunity to swim in information and just like get up to speed. There's usually like a lot of links that we provide as well for you to explore, depending on your background and the level of knowledge that you already have about the field. So it may be different from people to people, but yeah, there is I think plenty of opportunity for growth and development in the organization in general, but in this role specifically. So I'll let Alex speak a bit more about that.
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, I mean, just to add to what you said, Catherine, I think, as I mentioned up top, learning and development is a key part of this role. And just to give you all a sense of how it has been working within the policy team up until now, each of us has a monthly professional development call with our line manager, where we co-develop priorities, very much led by the manager, if you will, like what are their goals, what are their ambitions, and then together we look for what are the stretches within our work that we can actually try to pursue in order to ensure that everyone is really growing according to their wishes and their needs within the role. So not just carving out a set amount of time each week or each month for doing development, but actually mainstreaming professional development within our day-to-day work. And I very much plan to take a similar approach for this role. But again, would also be very keen to be led by whatever the successful candidate in this role wishes to achieve in terms of development.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, another role-specific questions. How do you measure success in this position as a policy officer?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And that question, I think, especially in the policy context, can sometimes be tricky. And so I would say, maybe as a preamble, our approach, I think, for all of our roles, but also including policy, is we try to hire really, really excellent, enthusiastic, mission-aligned people, and then give them a lot of trust in achieving maximum impact. And in the end, that is what we strive for as a nonprofit, is to create a more sustainable food system, to advance alternative proteins in order to achieve all our goals with regard to climate change, environmental protection, public health, animal welfare. And in the policy world, I would say impact can be fairly slow. It can take years for any given policy initiative to go through. And so we very much, as an organization, are comfortable with those timeframes and are convinced that policy work is essential to our mission. And so that, just to start with, that is the context in which we think about success within policy. With regard to this individual role and individual projects and initiatives, we do approach these in a fairly transparent way, like setting out goals. And for example, we have a 3-cycle per year planning system where we think about what are our key priorities, what do we want to achieve in the end, what are the milestones in order to get there, what we need to do, and we usually measure ourselves against those goals.
Awesome, thank you, Alex. And then there are a few, I'm going to go back to the kind of processy questions a little bit. People are asking, when is this position due to start? When would be, when will the final offer of a job be made, and all of that. So I'm going to paste in the chat link to the job brochure. Toward the end, you have a slide with the different steps of the recruitment process and the estimated dates. Usually from the moment that we close applications for this role, the deadline for application is June 26th. So from that point, the process usually takes between 5 and 7 weeks, depending on annual leave and things like that. So we try to go as fast as possible, but again, like there are a few steps, so there might be a little bit of delay, but that's usually the time it takes. For this role, I think that brings us to around mid-August. Okay, someone is asking, can we submit reference letters and how? The short answer is no. Basically, we don't want candidates to send anything more than what we ask for in the application form. So that's the sample word tasks and a CV. If we need references, we'll get back to you and ask for them, but that's only going to be for the successful candidates at the offer stage. Okay, people asking about office and also like co-working options. So can you detail costs for co-working to enable you to work from an office if you wish? Would this be a co-working space? Would it be permanent, or could it be used in different cities? Can we use the office in Forest to work while in Brussels, and things like that? So currently we don't have an office in Forest. we're basically in the process of establishing an office in Brussels. That's still ongoing, but once this is in place, the candidate, if based in Brussels or traveling to Brussels, would obviously be welcome to work there and enjoy some co-working time with colleagues as well. In terms of supporting costs for co-working, it's going to be a bit on a case-by-case basis because basically regulations in different countries varies, so we need to be mindful of that, and it also depends on the needs, so that's why it's a bit on a case-by-case basis, but in principle, we're very happy to support with that. We know that some people don't want to spend all their time working at home and like to go out and about, so very happy with that. Okay, maybe Alex, you could talk about how do you communicate with each other since you mostly work online?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I believe like most of us who over the last 2 years have gotten more used to working remotely have sort of figured that out. And I would say GFI has the benefit or the advantage that we were set up as a remote organization. So I think a lot of thinking has gone into how do we communicate efficiently online, but also how do we create a culture that is really positive and supportive. And so just to give you a few examples, so we have on Mondays regular team calls, both the policy team and the whole GFI Europe team. The Brussels policy team has another check-in call on Wednesdays, and then in addition to those, we have non-work related calls that are optional. We have a team tea break on Tuesday in the afternoon. We have a water cooler on Friday where no work talk is allowed, although we frequently break that rule and just can chat about the weekend, play games, trying to really make sure that we are not just colleagues, but like working in a very supportive and positive environment. And then in addition to that, I don't know if you want to say more about that, Catherine, but we try to also just get together in person regularly throughout the year.
Yes, obviously during COVID, that was a bit of a complication. Just that's an euphemism, but basically, yes, the plan is to get the team together twice a year for a staff retreat. So we all met in March this year, and the next one should be in September. So the first retreat was really focused on team connection, lots of fun activities and all of that. And then the September one might be more focused on strategy, but still plenty of time for connection. Really looking forward to that. Cool. Just going back to kind of the timeline, because I realized that I didn't fully answer people asking when should the candidates start working. So basically, the sooner the better would be the short answer. But again, for the right candidates, we're happy to be flexible. So there's not like, we're not set on a specific date, basically. And we're also aware that our process do take a little bit of time. So we do take that into consideration as well. Someone is asking, is there any advantage to applying earlier, as in not applying close to the deadline? No, there's no advantage. The applications will be like the sample work tasks will be assessed first, and as I mentioned, with a double blind marking system. So that's also why we ask you not to put any personal information into your sample work tasks. But that also means that like it's kind of randomized, so we don't really care about at which point during the process you submit your applications. There's no advantage there. I had something about cooperation question that was interesting. Yes. Let me find it. There's so many good questions. I'm having a hard time keeping up, so just bear with me. Alex, maybe that's one for you. Someone is saying, I was happy to see that in the job description, you state the policy officer will work not only with businesses and policymakers, but scientists as well. What GFI's engagement with scientists is like at the moment, and how would you like to see it developed?
That's such a good question. So maybe I start by saying GFI and GFI Europe has its separate science and technology department. So I would say some of the most brilliant scientists working on alternative proteins are working at GFI or have in the past worked for GFI. And so we have a very close connection to the scientific community. One of our key goals within our science work is to develop and advance the scientific ecosystem on alternative proteins. And so how that relates to our policy work is that frequently when we engage with policymakers, we bring scientists and scientists' perspectives and voices to those conversations. Just to give you a very concrete example, we organized a workshop last year for several officials in the European Commission to basically educate them about cultivated meat and its potential and the state of the sector. And we brought both startups working in that sector, as well as professors and PhDs from universities across Europe to speak about this field. And I think that is a fairly unique role that we as GFI can play, convening all those different actors. I would definitely like us to do this even more with scientists and researchers, because that is really a voice that policymakers, in my experience, value a lot. And so, yeah, facilitating that kind of exchanges, I think, is one of the things we would like to continue doing and doing more in the future.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, I want to go back to questions that was submitted in advance about diversity and inclusion and all of that. I think, yeah, I'm really excited about those questions because obviously I'm really interested in these topics. So the person is asking, you made clear that you are committed to diversity, inclusivity, and anti-discrimination. So there are actually 3 questions in one. Can you tell us more about the strategies you will implement during the recruitment process to avoid bias? Sure. So I kind of want to speak to the process more broadly, and I've already touched a bit on this, but basically we do think about DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion at all stages, from the moment we start thinking about the role and drafting the job description to all the way through the team members' path through the organization. So about the recruitment process specifically, starting with the job description, we do think about the language that we use in the job description, the criteria that we put as well. So we try to keep those minimal. As you've probably seen, like, we don't state a specific number of years of experience or a specific degree or things like that. We do look for skills and potential before like specific experience. So that's why we try to keep our job descriptions as open and inclusive as possible. After the drafting comes the promotion of our roles. So we try to advertise our position to the broadest audience possible and to a wide variety of groups. So we work through different channels. We work with recruiters. We also post on a number of groups and job boards, including quite a few of them with a specific diversity angle. Then through the process, already spoke about that, but basically all the written materials are anonymized, and the written assignments are anonymized and assessed with a double-blind marking. So you will receive a candidate number to allow for that. So yeah, obviously, like, there is always room for improvement and learning. So if you have any feedback, please send it our way. We're always keen on improving and learning. So yeah, to give a few kind of practical implementations that we've done recently, for example. So you can see, for example, in this Q&A that live transcription is now available. So that's something we've implemented recently to make this webinar more inclusive. Another thing that we've done is giving the opportunity to candidates to indicate their pronouns in the application form. That's totally optional, but that's a way for us to be able to address candidates in the way that they prefer if they choose to share this information with us. Okay, so then the same person is asking, what kind of measures does the Good Food Institute implement to ensure that the workplace is inclusive and diverse? Again, great question. Really excited to see that people are interested in those questions, because we do believe that they are really important. So obviously recruitment is a big part of that, but once you've recruited people, if you don't have the culture to support that diverse workforce, it doesn't work. So culture is also a big part of it. In practice, we do have the policies that you would expect in place. I think that's the bare minimum. And then on top of that, we do have a culture of listening, caring, empathy. We do really want people to just feel well in the organization and feel welcome. So one way that we kind of build that in is through providing a lot of flexibility. So we tend to lead with trust and empowerment. So yeah, that's a way for people to just like build the work around their own constraints as well, things like that. And then more broadly, we are an international nonprofit. So we do have kind of the mothership in the US, GFI studied in the US, but then we do have affiliates in Brazil, Asia Pacific, India, Israel, and then Europe. I don't think I'm forgetting anyone. I hope I don't. India, did I mention India? So we have basically people across the world. So obviously diversity is not only important for us, but it's also wide within the organization. And so we have different things in place for that as well. So just a concrete example again, we have a few affinity groups. We have a Proud at GFI group and an overall well-being league, which shortens to OWL, which I think is a funny name. So all about mental health and well-being and all of that. And then the last part of the question was, is your organization taking part in closing the gender pay gap? Short answer is yes. So you've probably noticed that in the job description and for all of roles, as much as possible, we do advertise our salary range. Not all our organizations do that. We try to do it as much as possible because we do believe that it's really important to be transparent. And also so that we are not perpetuating pre-existing gender pay gaps that might be coming from previous employers. So basically in that range, that's the range within which we would offer, make an offer, no matter the gender, the ethnicity, or whatever from the candidates. That will be based like mainly on experience. So yeah. Whew, I've been speaking for a lot. Let's find a question for Alex. Okay, someone is asking, I understand that this is more or less an early career position. How would you feel about considering candidates who have longer work experience, but in a different field?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So we would feel very good about that, to be honest. So we have, you're right, this in terms of how this position is set up. It reads like more of an early career position, and we definitely want to encourage people at the early stages of their career to apply. But that doesn't mean that if you have more years of experience, maybe working in a different field, and you see this role as it is described, see the organization and feel really enthusiastic about it and would love to do it, we very warmly encourage you to apply. We've hired in the past for different roles, people with different sets of experiences from different sectors. And I think the short answer is yes, please do apply.
Yeah, I agree that we do get a lot from people coming from other fields. Again, like we're very open to the different kind of experience, just because that's also a way that kind of enriches our thinking, having people coming from different fields. So definitely send in an application. Okay, so a few short ones. Someone is asking, I want to explain my connections in the EU bubble. Should I add a summary of this in my CV? I think, yeah, the only place to mention something about that would be the CV, because otherwise the other materials are just like work questions, and we want to keep those as anonymous as possible. And then someone is asking, would it be possible to work a week or month from outside of Europe? So in principle, yes, with the caveat that you would need to, or I mean, yeah, Europe and EU, but basically your country of residence would still need to be within Europe and be the country that appears in your contract. That being said, we've had team members that have enjoyed to some degree the kind of digital nomad lifestyle. So you're very welcome to spend a few weeks or a few months in another country. I don't think it has happened outside of Europe yet, but that's definitely possible. The only two things to keep in mind is that you would probably need to adjust to some degree to the European time zone so that we're still able to work together. And the second thing is that if there is like a mandatory meeting or things like that that you need to go to in Brussels or things like that, you might still need to be willing to travel back for that meeting. I'd say that's the main thing. But yeah, otherwise, again, there's plenty of flexibility. I think we've touched on this maybe a little bit already. GFI is a global organization with an impressive reach and talent pool. How do the practicalities of interaction and sharing of information between the various global branches work day to day? So yeah, as I mentioned, we have affiliates across the world. And I think we do have kind of the best of both worlds in the sense that we all do share the same mission and like the main kind of pillars of objectives, but then how we go about implementing those, we have a lot of autonomy in that regard, because the way you go about policy work in Europe will be very different from the way you go about it in the US. So we do have a lot of flexibility in how we implement our strategy, but we also get a lot of, like, we have a very collaborative culture. And so there is a lot of exchange of information we gain from colleagues' experience and all of that. Teams do have the kind of monthly meetings to coordinate and things like that. And I think Alex can probably tell more about policy specifically, which is more relevant to this role.
Yeah, so just to add to what Catherine, what you said, there are these regular coordination calls with policy team members from across the world, for example. But then there are also individual initiatives or individual projects that are shared between different policy teams from different country offices. Just to give you two examples, one is our work around the international climate negotiations. For example, now this year, COP27 in Egypt, there are team members from the US policy team, the Brazil team, the India team, Israel and Europe involved in preparing our presence and our activities at COP27. I was just in Bonn last week at the Bonn Climate Change Conference for that purpose, and our Asia Policy Director is in Bonn this week, so a lot of collaboration around that. So there are these kinds of initiatives, and I think in principle, those participating in those, are definitely within the scope of this role.
Awesome, thank you. Someone is asking roughly what will be the equivalent salary will be for a UK hire. So you might have noticed that in the job description, we advertised a range for a hire in Brussels. and then like a monthly gross salary. And then we gave a range as well for salary and benefits kind of packaged together. So the way we go about establishing those salary ranges is we conduct for each role a salary analysis. We do that by benchmarking, so speaking with recruiters, looking at salary surveys, and then other similar roles that are advertised at the same time. And from all that information that we triangulate, we're able to come up with a range that is the midpoint for the nonprofit sector. So that with all that information, we're kind of confident that we can offer something that's both fair and competitive within our sector. But obviously that requires a lot of work. It takes quite a bit of time. And because we do accept applications from all of Europe, we are not in a position to conduct those salary surveys at early stages for all the countries. So we usually do it for the country you think might be the most likely country of hire, although we've had plenty of surprises. And again, we're open for candidates from across Europe. So that's not really an indication. But so because of all of that, I'm afraid we're not able to provide a range for the UK specifically, because we haven't conducted that salary analysis at this point. But obviously, if the successful candidate were to be based in the UK, we would conduct that salary analysis again, so for the country of hire. So hopefully kind of the range that's advertised can still give you a rough idea of what we would be able to offer. But yeah, obviously there are variations within through countries. Okay, I think we had a couple of people asking, how many people do you intend to hire for this position? Are you looking to hire one officer, or is there capacity for more people to join the team? Alex, can you tell us a bit more about that?
The question is about this specific role and if there could be more than one person hired for this role, is that right? Yeah,
I think so. But I think happy for you to speak about kind of the what you can tell about the trajectory for the policy team.
Yeah, sure. So for the first part of the question, the goal for this role is to have one person to be hired for it. There might be a world in which at the end of the process, we have two absolutely excellent, outstanding candidates that we cannot decide between. And there might be a world where we'll try to make it happen that both can come on board, but like that is not something we can guarantee. This is one role for one person. It comes within a very exciting time in the policy team. When I started working for GFI Europe almost 3 years ago, I was a team of one, and now we are 7 people working on policy in Europe, hiring for one other role, except for this, the UK policy manager. And the plan is to expand even further. So we are working right now at the EU level. In Germany, we have a colleague in Berlin working at the German national policy level. The UK role I mentioned we are hiring for right now, but the plan is to go wider within Europe, to be present in all the major capitals and countries, to really amplify and improve our impact across the continent. So I would say whoever joins the team, it is a very exciting time of growth for GFI Europe.
Awesome, thank you. I think we've already spoken a bit about this, but someone is asking, what is the ideal candidate you are looking for? So if you had like 3 wishes for a successful candidate, Alex, what would those be?
That's such a good question. I would say, I mean, the one thing I think everyone working at GFI has brought, and that very much has, I would say 2 things has very much like shaped our internal culture. One is just enthusiasm for our mission, and just mission alignment. I think working in an environment where everyone is really dedicated to what we try to achieve, maximizing our impact, that has been fabulous and is essential for this and any role at GFI Europe. The other aspect, I think, is just being excited about being part of a supportive team, really valuing team connection as part of your work. That is something that we have been able, I think, to establish, and that is making all our lives and our work so much more fulfilling. But then outside of those two, we are really open to different kinds of people from different kinds of backgrounds. We talked about previous experience. We talked about having had a longer career in a different field. We are open to all of those backgrounds. So I wouldn't say there's this one ideal candidate profile. It really depends on your experience, what you bring to the table. And so I wouldn't want to narrow any specific, I wouldn't want to narrow like the ideal candidate profile to any specific experience.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, looking at the questions. I think we spoke again. Yeah, some of those questions like we've already kind of touched upon, but someone is asking, so you had a lot of new incorporations in the team this past year. How are you managing the newcomers? How are you creating a community within the institution? How are you doing team building activities? Speaking, especially taking into account the position is remote. So yes, as I mentioned earlier, like we have a 2 weeks onboarding process where you get to meet everyone in the team. We organize kind of little chats, welcome chats, so that you get to put faces on the names and get to chat with everyone. And yeah, you have like 2 weeks to swim into information and get acquainted with so the people, the organization, the work stream, and all of that. In terms of team building activities, we mentioned we have like a water cooler event on Fridays where we play games and chat about our weekend plans and things like that. We do have plans for team retreats twice a year so that we also get to meet in person. For people who are based in Brussels, we have, and in London as well, we have several colleagues in those cities in particular. So you might get the chance to meet people in person more regularly as well. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of opportunities. We might also conduct an audit this year about kind of those team building activities and team connection activities to see what else we can do, how we can improve on them. So again, that's also an area where we are always trying to learn and improve and think creatively about. Anything else you want to speak about, Alex?
Maybe just to say, in addition to all of what you said, Catherine, even within the policy team, we really want to prioritize team connection. And so to give you an example, we had a couple of team members within the policy team, 3 starting in between September and December last year. So we really made sure that within the policy team, everyone was coming together for a strategy and team connection days. Everyone was convening in Brussels. We rented an Airbnb together and had a really great time. At least that's what they tell me. I had, unfortunately, COVID at the time, so I was the only one from the policy team not able to join. But yeah, we want to basically repeat that towards fall this year. We did a policy team quiz, our first one last month, which was a huge success. So yeah, really trying to make sure everyone feels connected and feels as being part of this team.
Yeah, it's just, the quiz made me think also something related. Like recently, we have a team member who's really passionate about the Eurovision. And so we organized kind of a sweepstake where everybody was kind of attributed some countries. And we had like a kind of group watching of the Eurovision and chatting on WhatsApp and just commenting and things like that. So that was a lot of fun. So those are the kind of things that we do. But yeah, again, we're a very collaborative kind of organization. So if the people joining the team also wants to organize things and make suggestions, that's also very welcome. Okay, so we're nearing the end of this Q&A. So let's find a good one to finish on. And I think I have a good one. Alex, what do you like about working at GFI Europe? What is your favorite part?
That is such a good question. And I think I will repeat myself. It's just working in an environment where everyone shares this mission and this enthusiasm for creating an impact on the world. Literally building the roadmap, building the path for the world to shift away from industrial animal agriculture. That is something I think we all share in the Europe team, in the global team, and being able to work with brilliant and excellent colleagues who all share that enthusiasm and that dedication, that has been, for me, definitely the most rewarding and exciting thing about working for GFI Europe.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I think really like the team, the people we are working with, we just have, I think, I'm biased obviously, but I think we have the best bunch of just like kind, brilliant people. It's just such a joy to work with everyone day to day. So that's the main thing. And then just the mission, waking up every morning and being excited about the work that I do, and being convinced that like the work we do have a massive impact, and that we are actively contributing to changing the world for the better. Those are the two main things. Yeah, and if I had to say a third, like just the perk of just the flexibility, being able to work from wherever we want, the flexibility with the hours and all of that, that's also really, really useful. I was moving last week, and this flexibility, for example, was really useful in that context, because obviously moving is really stressful. So that was kind of the added peace of mind of knowing that I had that flexibility and that the team is fully understanding and will accommodate as much as possible. All right, I think that's it for today. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm gonna put a link again to the job description in the chat, as well as an email where you can reach us. I'm sorry we were unable to go through all the questions today. There were so many good questions. Thanks so much for sending those questions. If we were unable to answer your question, or if you have a new burning question coming up later, feel free to contact us at the email that I've put in the chat. And yeah, thanks again for joining. I hope we receive an application from you all soon. And I wish you a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.